Projetor em tela cheia, prévia, janela.
Beleza, galera? Mais um vídeo aqui no canal. Hoje trazendo mais um evento da Patrice. Hoje é 25. Lembrando, estamos no segundo vídeo do dia. Então, bora aqui. Um vídeo de alerta para vocês tomarem cuidado com suas crianças. Dura uma horinha esse evento. Preste muita atenção, cuidar bem dos seus filhos nos jogos e fora deles. Então, bora
Play
lá.
button, 2 of 3, pause button, video.
You're all set. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm going to have to back away because I'm already loud enough as is, but welcome to Boss Level Threat, Child Exploitation Trends in Online Gaming. We are very, very grateful that you are here. And to give you sort of an overview of the sense of what we're going to be talking about, we actually have a short video for you. Maybe. Anyway, so, ooh, here we go.
When I was just starting out, it was harder. You really had to keep things hush-hush. But then the internet came along, and everything changed. Now we hide in plain sight and share all kinds of things. We review, rate, make recommendations, just like anything else out there. Pre-internet, you know how hard it was to pretend to be a 9-year-old girl? Now I just roll up looking like their BFF. And the best part, the only people who could stop me pretend I don't exist. You ask me, there's never been a better time to be a monster.
All right, so to be perfectly honest, the stuff that we're going to be talking about is going to be very heavy. So I actually want to give a warning and just sort of an advisory for everybody. We are going to be having a very frank conversation about what all of us are facing online, especially minors. So we are going to be having a very frank conversation about human trafficking, sexual violence, and sexual situations. All of it is redacted, but we strongly encourage folks that if you are experiencing this and it becomes too heavy for you, if you need to take a break, walk out, or if you're like, nope, this is not for me, you can leave. We are not going to be insulted. And actually, we for once have a table that is outside of room 154 down by the Sky Bridge, so you can have a conversation with us later on if you have any questions. So, first, we are going to introduce our panelists who are going to be the experts, and I have the lovely Jessica Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yep, sorry. Got hung up there. My name is Jessica Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of ClickSafe Intelligence, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are completely dedicated to researching online child exploitation in both gaming, social media, pretty much all across the board. And the way that we do this is through actual in-game research as well as research into dark web child predator exploitation forums where they are sharing tips and tricks and communing with one another. We pair all of that together to create prevention and response education that, for lack of a better way of putting it, is coming straight from the horse's mouth.
All right, so my name is Teresa Howdigi. I am an attorney with the Joel Bieber firm, which is essentially a personal injury firm. I am within their sexual assault practice, so I represent survivors of institutional sexual assault. Of the various things that I do, I have approximately 100 different clients who were children who were exploited as a result of Roblox. Before that, I was the chief legal officer for an anti-trafficking nonprofit called the National Child Protection Task Force, which is actually where Jess and I met. And before that, I was a prosecutor for just shy of 10 years, where I specialized in anti-human trafficking, prosecution of sexual assault, domestic violence, homicide, and online child exploitation. Even before that, when I was in law school, I was with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in their cybercrime divisions. And in addition to that, I have been an enforcer since 2012.
And my name is Elliot Yergi. I am the Chief Operating Officer at ClickSafe Intelligence. I have around 8 years in cybersecurity and digital investigation experience. Have a master's in applied intelligence, as well as some cybersecurity certifications as well. And most importantly, I've also been an avid gamer for the last 26 years as well.
All right, so to do a brief overview of what we are going to be covering, we are introducing ourselves. We're going to be talking about terms, doing some case examples, talking about the research that ClickSafe Intelligence has done on its various different platforms, and then we're going to be talking about proactive and reactive steps. One of the things that we definitely want to talk to you more about is some recent decisions that have come out within the last week. If you've been seeing about the social media addiction cases and or Meta being held liable for knowing about the child exploitation that was happening on its platform. Here's the thing, that is like a whole other thing that I could literally talk about for hours on end. So again, come and talk to us at the table downstairs. But to begin,
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Let's talk a little bit about what is online exploitation. So it is any action by an individual with the intent to solicit nude, sexual, or inappropriate videos, photographs, messages, or any other forms of inappropriate media or communications from a person under the age of 18 through the use of an online platform. The forms of child online exploitation we're going to be talking about is CSAM, child sexually abusive material, what was previously known as child pornography. We do not use that term anymore because pornography is consensual and children can never consent. Then there's online solicitation and enticement, also referred to as grooming, self-produced CSAM, sextortion, and then my newest soapbox platform discussion, which is AI-generated CSAM. So, normally what we try to do is we try to cite back to NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Every year they publish various different reports in regards to the reports that they have of all different kinds of online exploitation. So what I can report is that in general, girls are the ones who appear overwhelmingly in CSAM. Prepubescent children are at the greatest risk to be depicted in CSAM. Unfortunately, when boys are victimized, they are much more likely than girls to be subjected to very explicit or egregious abuse. Often that involves extreme violence. And then here's the thing that when I started out as a prosecutor that I was very adamant about, people will often say, oh, well, these are just pictures. Well, they are pictures that live on the internet forever, and they continue to re-victimize that individual regardless of how old they were from when they took that photo. Unfortunately, what we have found is that there are images and videos that are taken of children when they are young as 6, and now they are in their 30s or 40s, and they are still finding out that these images are continuing to be circulated online. 78% of reports involving online enticement involve girls, 15% involve boys. And again, all of this is the 2024 numbers from NCMEC. So just to point that out right there, there were 19.9 million new CSAM images, both still images and videos that were reported in 2024. One of the other things that we didn't necessarily experience when we were growing up was the self-generated CSAM. It's very common with a lot of tweens and teens nowadays to share intimate images of themselves as part of a relationship. So Thorn, other nonprofit that also specifically addresses this area, is that we are continuing to see youths who are providing these images as a result of like, hey, we are partners, we're boyfriend, girlfriend, or anything else along those lines. This is part of our relationship, and then when it gets broken up, then those images end up being distributed elsewhere. The bigger problem, and this has been within the last year, is actually AI-generated CSAM. So multiple child protection organizations have basically been sounding the alarms in regards to generative AI. So in 2025, the Internet Watch Foundation identified 3,443 AI-generated CSAM videos, and this was on the open internet. This is not on the darknet, which, just as an FYI, is a 26,000% increase of the AI-generated CSAM videos that were found in 2024, which there were all of 13. Here's the thing, LLMs, nudifiers, text-to-image models are all being utilized to generate CSAM. Some of you may have just seen that in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, there was a school in which 2 teenage boys had produced thousands upon thousands of AI-generated images of their fellow classmates. And they have now just been sentenced in a criminal case for developing those materials because they have such tremendous impact on those individuals. What we are also finding, though, is that it's not only the open AI platforms, it's actually offline closed source models that are of significant concern. Even though like xAI's Grok with their nudifier definitely made the news in terms of creating non-consensual intimate images, but on dark web predator forums, they essentially share their own AI programs in order to develop their own CSAM, one of which recently was Aaron Bagath-Corey, an alleged member of 764, we'll get to that in a moment, who was charged with trafficking CSAM out of Albany, New York in February of this year. He allegedly utilized a chatbot to create at least one image of a child being sexually assaulted by multiple people. This is one that we have seen on a major rise since what, Jess, like 2021? Yeah. So financial sextortion is a trend that continues to multiply precipitously over the last 5 years. In fact, it has become such a significant issue that FinCEN, which is the US Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which normally deals with things like insider trading and like mortgage fraud, issued a warning about financial sextortion in 2025. Perpetrators of financial motivation sextortion schemes can target anybody, and I can guarantee you, if you start having a frank conversation with people in your life, you will find at least one person who has been subject to this. They target anybody, but generally boys between the ages of like 14 to 17 are the most vulnerable population. And what has been reported is that 55,000 different cases of financial sextortion just in 2024 alone, and 1 in 5 teens have reported experienced sextortion. What I will say is that generally, when it determines on the kind of sextortion, and when I'm referring to that is, someone is threatening to release intimate images of you or AI-generated intimate images of you in exchange for something else. With girls, it is generally for more images. For boys, it is generally for financial gain. Just a quick exploitation by the numbers. Again, this was just the 2024 numbers in terms of AI-generated CSAM, and over 100 reports of financial sextortion a day. This is actually the hardest part. We know of tracking worldwide that there are at least 60 children who have died as a result of suicide because of financial sextortion. And this is based upon a report by Thorn, in addition to our own tracking. Thorn, in a report called Sexual Extortion and Young People Navigating Threats in Digital Environments, which was released June of last year, they surveyed 1,200 different teens ranging between the age of 13 and 20. 14% of those young people who had experienced this harmed themselves. When you start talking about LGBTQIA youth, that jumps up to 28%. 1 in 6 victims were 12 years or younger when they were sextorted. And frankly, as far as we're concerned, there should never be a child who dies as a result of suicide because they find themselves in this situation. One of the reasons that we are seeing this massive increase in self-harm and also suicide is partially because of what has been now coined to be NVEs, nihilistic violent extremists, such as Cult or 764, because the long and the short is that these are child abuse Ponzi schemes. These are individuals who basically find a community of other individuals where they are able to gain social clout and or are able to find entertainment in recruiting children to harm themselves and then blackmail them to continue to harm themselves or other individuals. The founder of 764 was actually a 16-year-old boy in Texas who used variations of the screen name Felix or Brad while running the group's online operations from home. Bradley Cadenhead, who is the founder, he has now been sentenced. I can't remember how many decades he's going to be spending in federal prison. But he was the one who basically founded and perpetuated this idea that children engaging in not only sexual acts, but sadomasochistic acts, including acts of self-harm, was the way to go about things. And then he essentially would basically, once he was able to trap one individual, he would make them continue to hurt themselves. But if they recruited someone else, they would stop being picked on, and then they could focus on the new person, which is how and why I refer to it as a Ponzi scheme. It's become so severe that actually FBI Boston has released a warning as of, again, February of this year, talking about this massive uptick. So this is actually probably the most depressing slide, and I know that's quite a feat, unfortunately. So when I was updating this slide, because 764, Colt, and the COM all are basically NVE groups, and they are all decentralized groups. But when I was updating the slide, that second point right there, an arrest where an abuser had planned to murder a 14-year-old victim he had found on Roblox. So I realized I didn't provide a site when I had done this panel back at PAX West last year. And then when I tried to go back and find that exact story, I couldn't pinpoint which one because I found over 24 cases where it was basically the exact same thing. That is how many arrests are happening with individuals who are preying upon children on these various different platforms and essentially engaging in extreme abuse. One of the more recent instances we found is actually that third point, the arrest of 5 men in their 20s. I think they were ranging everywhere between like 22 and 28, and they were literally all over the continental US. Greggy's cult. They were focused on recruiting victims for, again, their child abuse Ponzi scheme. And they found them, these victims, on Roblox, Counter-Strike, and Discord. There are going to be a couple of predator quotes that we will talk about and have throughout. So one of the things that ClickSafe does, which is absolutely amazing, is that ClickSafe specifically goes into dark web predator forums to look and analyze what the ongoing trends are among predators to find their various different victims. And so at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Jess.
Yeah, so what we do is a lot of like forensic linguistics to ensure that we are not just leveraging victim reports. While that is very, very important, we want to make sure that we're taking all of those trends and those tactics from the predators themselves. So we are looking for anything from mentions of particular platforms, discussions around moving away from particular platforms because they are no longer lucrative in terms of finding victims. Generally speaking, just to give you sort of an idea of what we're seeing in the gaming space, and I think Teresa will touch on this later, is that historically, when we look 5 to 10 years ago, child predators were saying, online gaming is never going to take off, like the kids are not there, we're not going to be adopting these platforms, social media is doing exactly what we need it to do. This is where we're having the most success. And I would say over the past 5-ish years or so, we have seen a greater shift in child predators saying things like, can somebody teach me how to use Roblox? Or I need to create a Minecraft account, or I guess I need to go get myself a console because there are just so many kids on these online gaming platforms, they're getting too smart to operate on social media, so now it's time to adopt online gaming as a, sort of our new frontier in terms of targeting and engaging with kids.
Yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did as we were kind of focusing a lot of our efforts at ClickSafe on, where are the platforms that children are on and where are the ones that child predators are going to, we wanted to actually find out from people who play video games, what are the actual places and games and platforms that are having what we called online adverse experiences. And so we conducted this to understand which games are the most popular, but also which have the biggest propensity for these problematic interactions that could potentially lead to a child being exploited. So this was a survey that we did conduct in 2024. But one of the things that we did do as well is that we wanted to define what an adverse user experience was. And so we used a broad scope of different things that can include things such as grooming, enticement, sexual abuse, sextortion, some of those things that we've already talked about today, but also other areas such as harassment, stalking, bullying, name calling, as well as things such as requesting for personal information, requests for photos of yourself, sexualized photos, as well as things like offering in-game gifts in exchange for other items as well. So for this survey that we did, we had over 300 participants that filled this out from around the world. And what we found was that a total of 145 of these survey participants experienced some sort of adverse behavior while they were minors. And so in breaking down the age groups, out of the 145 total, we had 5% of participants who reported that these happened to them between the ages of 5 and 9 years old. We had 31% of them found that they were between the ages of 10 and 14 years old, and 64% of these 145 were between 15 and 17 years old. And one of the highest games that we had this happen on was League of Legends, was a highly cited game that there was some adverse experiences on, with nearly 60 participants indicating they had some sort of problematic experience. However, though, the other top games were ones like Roblox, Minecraft, Among Us, Call of Duty, and Fortnite. So in collecting these adverse experiences from participants, they were also allowed to select multiple types of experiences, since we gave them a broad range of categories to choose from. And so ones like name calling, degradation, bullying, general harassment, people just kind of being mean to each other online, things like trash talking. These were actually the most commonly reported behaviors, because if you guys play online games, that happens all the time. However, sexually driven behaviors were not too far behind. A couple of callouts that we found to be interesting were that sexual advances ranked higher at 8.9% compared to sexualized conversations. And when you compare that to something like bullying, which only came at 9.5%, that's really not a massive difference between those two different types of behaviors. Requests for sexualized imagery ranked higher at 5.3% compared to general requests for photos, which was only around 2.7% of our respondents. And lastly, requests or discussions of moving conversations to other platforms had a report rate of 4.7%. This isn't super high compared to some of the other ones, but we do like to call this out, since this is something that does happen a lot in cases of child exploitation, where we see these people have an initial conversation on a video game, and then over Discord or another platform, will actually attempt to actually exploit the victim that way. And so this is kind of some of the statistics from around the specific platforms that we saw respondents say that conversations or experiences moved to, with Snapchat being the highest at 23, followed by Facebook and Discord. And so while we can't say that, definitively that these are going to be the platforms that a predator moves to every single time, this is a good indicator of for some of the platforms that these child predators may have felt safer moving these conversations to. So one of the first investigations that ClickSafe did and provided research on in the realm of video games was on the video game Roblox. And if you have looked in the news in the last 6 months to honestly the last 4 or 5 years, Roblox comes up a lot as a platform where either an arrest has happened, or there's been a child kidnapping, or just really bad and gross stuff happens. And so that's why we decided to kind of spend a lot of our kind of first major study into Roblox. And this is an example of directly from a child predator forum, one of the reasons why we also chose Roblox. I'm not going to read this out, but this is the type of sentiment that a lot of individuals on these forums have, and that the willingness for a child to do something, if they try to give them an in-game gift. So the way that ClickSafe Intelligence does our research is we want to make sure that we have a very strict standard operating procedure, and for 2 primary reasons. The one is that we want to make sure that we have everything documented. In the case we need to hand anything over to law enforcement, we can do that. And number 2, we want to be able to capture the experience like a child actually would, because we are not a fan of fear-mongering or making a platform seem more dangerous than it is. We want to see what a child would actually experience if they're playing this game, to be able to provide that to parents. And so some of the research standard operating procedures we had for our first study in 2023 was that no researcher initiated conversations. The biggest reason, because we didn't want to lead anyone. We wanted these things to, if someone approached us and tried to exploit our account, we wanted that to be captured and not the other way around. And we also made sure that all of our gameplay was recorded, that we try to play certain experiences within Roblox that a child would play. And then we specifically had 3 separate accounts, 2 child and 1 adult as a control over a 30-day period in 2023. And what we found in 2023 was kind of surprising at first, because this is the first study we did into it, but we found a lot of not great things. We had a total of 18 play sessions per those accounts. We had a total of 540 minutes per persona, or around 1,600 minutes of gameplay total for this first research project. We had played 113 unique experiences on Roblox, and we recorded 33 inappropriate interactions. So some of the biggest ones we had were sexually charged conversations involving minors, sexually harassing behavior. There's customizable elements of avatars, either that had inappropriate clothing, like you see some of the ones depicted on the screen there, ability for a child avatar to be nude, as well as direct interactions from players to the researchers having sexualized conversations. And then back in 2023, we kind of found that a lot of the age ratings on those experiences weren't the most accurate. And we also found that the all genres and town and city genre types for experiences is where we found the most unsafe and inappropriate experiences. And one of these prime examples we had is from an experience called Roblox High School 2. And this was a town and city genre where basically players roleplay high school students. While in and of itself, the player is, emulating a teen, it was very apparent from the chat and the voice that there was a lot of children who were also in that game. And one of the things that we saw in this was that, just while playing the game one time, there was two players who were having simulated virtual sex. And so these chats were public. Everyone could see what was going on, and this is a screenshot of where the researcher went into the room and saw the conversation happening. And this was in a private home that the players had. And Roblox chat monitoring didn't catch any of this sexualized conversation or behavior. Another major finding that we found was that there was a lot of attempts to move conversations to external platforms. And this is, again, as we mentioned, a really important thing to consider when a lot of child predators will attempt to move to something like Discord, something like Snapchat, Facebook, to have these conversations. And so one of the things that Roblox does is have some chat filtering in place to try to prevent this from happening. But as you can see in some of these examples here from 2023, saying the word snappy instead of Snapchat avoided those filter detections, or Disco instead of Discord. And specifically, Roblox doesn't support sending pictures or videos over direct messages. So when someone would attempt to get someone's Snapchat username or Discord handle, that oftentimes at that point doesn't matter, because in Roblox can't do anything about it regardless at that point. Then oftentimes someone who knows what that conversation can be had on Discord or Snapchat. And so we did see here that there was a lot of filter limitations that were in place on the platform. Every player knew how to kind of work around those. And that's what some of these examples are here. So you may be thinking, hey, Elliot, this is from 2023, this is 2026. Why are we talking about 3-year-old research? That's because we also did this again in 2025. And we did this from February 2025 to June 2025 because we wanted to see in a 2-year span if things were different. And at this time, we actually had 5 different accounts we used. We had over 100 hours of gameplay, 145 play sessions, and 105 experiences. So this was overall roughly it was a lot larger of a research project we did. And within 48 hours, one of our researchers was solicited to go to Discord. And the researcher said, hey, I am a 14-year-old. That was the persona that they were given. And the guy said, great, that's not a problem. I want to add you on Discord anyways. And so actually doing some further investigation on this specific user as well, we also found that at least some of these people were members of condo game Discord servers. And if you aren't familiar with those are just games that basically people have simulated sex in Roblox, or they make modifications to experiences to have that. It is highly against Roblox's terms of service, but there's a lot of underground communities on Discord and other places that share those around, and we saw some of those accounts being on those as well.
And also, just to chime in here, those are also the ones where there are condo games where you can replay various different school shooting experiences and or be involved and or exposed to various different like extreme racial hatred servers. So that's where you will find a lot of the Nazi positive content.
Yes, the one that we went on specifically was a Holocaust camp simulator where people were two different groups. So from this, compared to 2023, we had 42 specific interactions that had sexual content. So these are either specific experiences that had these from players. We had 31 noted instances of sexual interactions, 11 requests to move off platform, 6 grooming attempts from individuals, and there was actually one occurrence where someone tried to solicit CSAM from one of our researchers. And so one of the things that we saw in comparison to 2023 is that we noticed there was a large amount of what was called hangout games. So these are games that took place in either bathrooms or showers or clubs or houses that were kind of all themed similarly, that basically the whole point was to have simulated sex. Some of these experiences had hidden rooms where you could actually unlock things like genitalia for the characters. And it was very much against that Roblox terms of service, and there was children active on those experiences. Another thing that we found is that some Roblox experiences had AI baked into them. So Roblox experiences can be developed by anyone who I believe has an approved account. And so with that, some of these had AI chatbots in them. And so one of our guys that we had researching with us decided to try to go around the filters on the AI. And I think it took him 2 minutes, and he had the AI be able to tell him how to make a bomb, how to kill his parents, how to commit a sexual offense, how to hide evidence of things. And this was all within a Roblox experience, not something that any parent going on the platform would expect. Another thing we found was that the inexperienced chat filtering still wasn't working properly. It was still having problems with actually catching different slang and actually preventing off-platform conversation. And then again, we did see instances where, in the case of someone trying to trade CSAM with our researchers, this was something that they tried to get us to add them on Discord and Snapchat. And once they gave us that information, we made a report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to ensure that that was reported properly. So the most recent publication that we did was on VRChat. So I don't know how many here are familiar with the platform. It's been around for a lot of years, I think around 12 years at this point, and it is a VR application. And there was a specific reason why. And so this quote here is from another dark web child predator forum where it says, "I would love to see videos of showing CP to kids on VRChat. I saw one such video and I liked the idea." This is from September of 2025. This was within the last year that people are talking about VR platforms as a possible way to either groom children on the platform, either exploit children on the platform. And so ClickSafe wanted to see, what was happening. And not surprisingly, we found quite a bit of issues. So one of the things that we did find was kind of confirmation of what that child predator forum was saying, was that you has the ability to upload and interact any custom videos into some of the worlds that people create. And the screenshot on the top left there, that's a screenshot from the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion, a scene of one of the teen characters who's nude. And while in and of itself, that's just an anime, there was a compilation of most of those scenes being that in an all ages room. There's no age restrictions on it. And so this content, any child could just go into it who signed up for an account. So we found also a lot of sexualized user-generated content as kind of being the dominant form of child safety risk on VRChat. Another instance we had was a world that one of our researchers joined, and after about 5 minutes of being in the room, a compilation of furry pornography came up on the screen that the player could not control or do anything with, and took over the complete visor. And so with that, there was no warning, there was nothing to indicate that this room was for that purpose. And so any child navigating that platform could have experienced that. One of the things that we did see as well is that VRChat did have a heavy self-moderation of some of their worlds. You have the ability to set age limits and or have ID verification for some of those. But for some of them, for certain groups within the worlds, it did rely on self-moderation. So if there wasn't any mods in it, people could pretty much do whatever they wanted to do. One of the positive themes that we did see, and kind of in comparison to Roblox, so I didn't mention this, but when we made reports to Roblox, we didn't really get much back from them, if anything. So every time that would happen, we would feel a little defeated because we're making reports and we would think action was being taken. So one thing that we did notice with VR Chat is when we did report things to them, they had a very fast response time. They actually let us know, hey, we actually took action on this activity, which was really good to see that they were able to take a lead on that and be able to help us out. Go this one. So next thing that we also want to do, as Jess mentioned earlier, is we'd like to be able to look at the dark web chat forums and from a forensic linguistic perspective, take a look at trends and also be able to look at, what predators are actually talking about, what they're actually using. And so one of the things that we did was pull a bunch of chat conversations from a lot of different child predator forums dating back to January 1st, 2020. And so we used kind of different games, different platform names, different types of gaming slang. And from 21 different predator forums, we pulled a total of 25,330 unique posts of child predators talking about one of these games or gaming in general. And among the top 5 platforms were Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, Call of Duty, and Among Us, which actually kind of aligned mostly perfectly with what we, those adverse experiences that we talked about earlier. We also had searches that came up for Destiny, Overwatch, League of Legends, and Apex Legends as well, as additional indicators that people were discussing. So when we actually filtered down at these searches a little further and just had just the game names, removing some of the other gaming terminology and some of the other kind of slang there, we had a total of 2,165 posts that specifically talked about each one of these individual games, with Minecraft and Fortnite being the top mentioned platform. And so kind of overarching themes, when we took a look at all of these posts, were either successful exploitation stories saying, hey, I met a kid on this platform and I actually was able to exploit them. Suggestions on where to locate children to exploit, saying, hey, go to this world, go to this server, and you might be able to talk to children on there. As well as how to groom different children on different platforms and kind of people sharing methodologies on which ones work the best, which was really sickening to see.
So the next 2 slides contain predator quotes that we are continuing to find on various different dark web predator forums. And here's the thing, ClickSafe is constantly monitoring and looking at these different platforms to see what the latest trends are. And there are frankly a lot of posts that we do not share, frankly because they are so inflammatory and upsetting. But there was one that we saw, it was Wednesday specifically. Yep. Wednesday, it was in a Discord platform specifically advertising for underage e-kittens on Roblox. So this is still an ongoing pattern, an ongoing problem. And what we have found now is that when I started prosecuting instances of child grooming and child exploitation, a lot of it was done in terms of rapport building in person with individuals who were in positions of trust. Now, not only is that occurring, but we are finding that these are people who are working to build rapport, trust, and teams on these various different popular gaming platforms, and that is how they are able to ultimately move them from the game to a isolated chat, either Discord, Telegram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, something along those lines that they can control. All right, well, that's all incredibly depressing. How about we actually give you some solutions for moving forward, okay?
Ready, Eddie? Okay, this is great. I didn't have to talk about any of the dark stuff today. I just get to tell you all of the stuff that you can do to prevent this. So Like Teresa said when she was kind of introing our presentation, it is incredibly important, and we are entirely rooted in being able to prevent this type of activity from happening. Now, I want everybody to understand that we try not to approach this as a one-size-fits-all, so there might be things that we share here that you're like, that would never work for my kid. That's okay, we fully understand that. All of these different things, these different solutions and steps, it is a multi-layered approach, and there is no one correct sort of like potion or concoction of all of the different techniques and methods that you can take in terms of prevention and response and protection in general. So the first thing we're going to talk about here in terms of proactive steps is actually role playing. So Dr. Lisa Jones a while back did a fantastic study, and she dug into what is truly the most effective way to get kids, specifically teenagers, to be able to like have the confidence that they need to resist against things like peer pressure, online exploitation. It all kind of mapped together. And what she found was it is through role play. And the reason being, you are practicing, right? Now, I think it's hard for me to even envision trying to get a teenage, 15-year-old to role play saying no to somebody online, but the reality is you have repeated exposure, you have greater intensity, you're forcing them into those situations where they actually have to map the neural pathways to create that sort of muscle memory it takes to be able to do those things and say no. And the more we have peer engagement, the more support there is between the students or between the teenagers, so they feel also safer going to that support system or that peer network that they have there as well if they are in trouble or they need help. You also have this very skill-based focus, so you insert the problem solving. You force them again to practice that assertiveness and that resistance to peer pressure. They're forced to actually deal with the reaction of that peer. And then they also get to practice emotional regulation and impulse control, which is incredibly important. We'll go to the next one here. So a couple other proactive steps here, and I'm sure some of this is going to be redundant. We've talked about this a lot. Building a trusting and open relationship is incredibly important. So, and talking early and often about these things. We tell kids from the get-go, that from the moment that they understand language, like you don't take candy from strangers, you don't walk away with strangers. If some creepy guy in the park comes up to you saying, I have a box of puppies, you walk back to mom and you find mom. We have to have those same conversations about online safety as well, because that world is just as dangerous, if not even more present in our lives than this sort of like stranger danger that exists in the physical world. Encouraging them to also have multiple trusted adults in their lives. And for any of you here that maybe don't have your own children, you can still be one of those trusted adults. Not every kid has supportive parents who they feel comfortable going to or talking to, but that doesn't mean that they don't have that really cool aunt that is their best friend or their coach or their teacher. So making that sort of circle of trust, and I know that sounds super cheesy, but we have to have that for kids. They have to have that.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in here really quickly. So when I was a prosecutor, I ended up handling thousands of cases over the course of my career when it came to children who were being abused and exploited. And I dealt with parents who completely ran the gamut in terms of, they, for whatever reason, weren't able to be as involved in their children's lives, to the ones that were like super duper heavily involved. What I can tell you is that the ones who reported and the kids who end up reporting directly to the parents are the ones who had built that relationship of trust and rapport, knowing that, hey, I'm in a bad situation. There may be consequences later, but right now let's get you to a place where we can get you help and where you can be safe. That is the biggest thing, and I can tell you, there is no parental control, there is no app, there is no, hey, you're not gonna be allowed to have any devices. That is a Band-Aid to the solution. Telling and working with your kids to build that trust that they can come to you if they are in trouble, that is the biggest way to not only prevent this from happening, but also getting them help instantaneously.
Yep, and that's actually a perfect segue. So The role playing, that is also good for you as a parent or one of those trusted adults, because it gives you the ability to practice responding calmly and without judgment. And that is going to instill that feeling of safety and, oh my gosh, this person is my ally. They are somebody who I can go to with anything, because for a variety of reasons, if we freak out and we go mama bear or daddy bear or whatever, they can shut down, they can withdraw, they can experience a tremendous amount of shame. It can re-victimize, re-traumatize. I mean, we could talk about that all day. So responding as calmly as possible, not busting them for the little things when and where possible. Natural consequences are natural consequences. Those will ultimately come. But staying calm is incredibly important. And then I can't stress this enough, staying actively involved in their online world. We are all busy. Like if I told you what my schedule looks like on a day-to-day basis, I think most of you would keel over, but like making the time to sit and with my daughter and game with her is so incredibly important, because it gives you a better understanding not only of the world that they are in, you understand how to report accounts, you understand how to block accounts, you ask questions, you allow your child to teach you, and they love nothing better than feeling like they are the expert, helping mom or dad or auntie or whomever through it. So staying actively involved and knowing exactly what tools they're using is not only good for them, but it is good for you as the parent as well. We'll go through a couple of red flags, and just caveat for this, this is going to feel like you're going to read these and go, well, this is like my teenager just on a normal Tuesday, but there are some idiosyncrasies here, so we'll dive into those. So being withdrawn or shut down. And I want you to think about a couple of things as you're assessing these things. You have to understand your child's baseline. If they are somebody who is a social butterfly, they are involved in everything, and suddenly they go to a place where they are withdrawn and shut down, that's a deviation from baseline behavior. If it is something that lasts longer than you would particularly expect for this child, you know, they withdraw after they fail a test or they lose a soccer game. Okay, that's a couple of days, but are we going on week 3 or week 4 of not wanting to see our friends? So deviation in timeline there. And also there's no discernible reason behind it. Again, soccer game, failed test. But if you can't figure out and they refuse to tell you why they are acting this way, those are all sort of indicators that can help you determine, is this normal teenage angst versus do we have a bigger problem here? So withdrawn and shut down, anxious, jumpy, or fearful. Kids who are being sextorted or abused online, honestly, they oftentimes have a very, very heightened sense of anxiety, because their abusers will say, if you don't respond to me at this day and this time, punishment will happen or XYZ will happen. And so they get incredibly jumpy because they're worried about missing a check-in or something like that. Heightened emotions, again, this is not just like the tears that come with hormones. This is off the cuff. They throw a chair because they do not have healthy coping mechanisms, or they do not know how to deal with the anxiety or the stress, or complete and utter emotional breakdowns that just feel so incredibly heightened compared to what they normally do when they are stressed or sad. Increasing in illnesses or absences from school, this can be for 2 reasons. One, the anxiety and the stress is getting so physically overwhelming that their body actually is starting to shut down and become sick, or it is because they feel like they cannot part with their device, again, because they have a check-in or because they have to send pictures at certain times, and so they feign illnesses or try to be absent from school so that they do not have to give away their phone for that period of the school day. Last one here, evidence of self-harm. This can be actual physical self-mutilation, cutting, burning, things like that, but it can also manifest in the form of unseasonable clothing, so wearing a sweatshirt in the middle of summer to cover up that self-harm. And then we'll go to the next one. So new online love interest or friends. I mean, online gaming and social media is for connectivity, but if somebody, your child or a child in your life is being super secretive, or they disclose to you that this person is older, that is something that we want to take very seriously, start asking some questions. Harm to siblings or pets. Really, like, that is kind of out of the norm, I would say, for just about anything, notwithstanding some mental health issues and stuff. But unfortunately, this is something, when we are talking about the nihilistic violent extremists or the sadistic online exploitation, those abusers oftentimes will have their victims turn on their family pets or their siblings or their friends in some cases. sudden influx of money or new possessions, gift giving is one of the most effective mechanisms to groom and sexually exploit a child. Now with things like peer-to-peer payment systems, Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, in-game currencies, e-gift cards, predators don't have to necessarily hand over a physical product or physical gift to their victim. They can do this all virtually as well. So if suddenly your kid says, yeah, I have 1,000 Robux to spend, and you know that it wasn't just their birthday, they didn't just get a Robux gift card from grandma, we're gonna start asking who they got that from. And then lastly, increased dependency or attachment to their device. Again, this isn't just the, oh, I don't want to put my phone down at dinner time. Like, Nancy's going to text me. This is a full-on meltdown. I cannot part with my device because something bad is going to happen. It is going to be sneaking or stealing the device back from mom and dad, or trying to put it in their room at night, take it to the bathroom with them. Something that just, again, feels above and beyond what they have previously done.
One I didn't add to this slide, if for whatever reason your child says that they have written a note and said that they've run away from home, if they leave their phone and their phone is wiped, or they leave their tablet is wiped, or anything else along those lines, immediately call the police. That is actually a very common tactic among predators, is to train the child that they've been grooming and abusing to say that they're going to be running away from home, because for a lot of police departments, that ends up being not a crime that they can investigate. But when a kid leaves their phone and it is wiped, when it is their entire world, because heck, it's our entire world, that means something is very, very wrong.
Okay, couple of do's and don'ts here. So this is a, if something happens, right? Your child comes to you, something happens. The first thing that we want you to do is help them block the account or the predatory account. Block them across all platforms. We want you to report the account to the platforms as well. This is not just because they are a bad individual. This is about preservation of evidence, and that helps the platform. We also want you to document and save anything that you can. So take screenshots of things, so they'll save to the camera roll in the phone or the tablet. Even physically take out a pen and paper and write down usernames, URLs, like anything that you can have, because that can help law enforcement and people like us identify the person behind the username. We want you to also report this to a variety of different sources, and Teresa will talk more about that, but reporting to the cyber tip line through NCMEC. This is because they are the national clearinghouse for any sort of child sexual exploitation or missing and endangered cases. They can help get that case to the correct law enforcement agency. Leveraging Take It Down, Teresa, you can cover that as well. This is a fantastic resource. I'll let her go into it. And then obviously reporting to law enforcement if you are comfortable. Again, this is about preservation of evidence. This is about paper trail. And lastly, but of course not least, the trauma from these types of things can manifest in so many different ways at different times. So we highly recommend ensuring that even if your child is like, I'm fine, this is not a big deal, seeking out some mental health support, because this could hit 6 months down the road, and we want to make sure that they are supported. As far as don'ts go, again, we want you to stay calm. We don't want you to freak out. It's very, very hard not to, but the calmer you stay, the more likely your child is to continue to talk, to continue to disclose. They're not going to feel ashamed, and is going to help their recovery. We do not want you engaging with the predator.
Do not pull a Chris Hansen. I am begging you. Please do not.
The reason being here is this truly, we cannot stress this enough, if you engage with the predator, it will spook them, they will go dark, and they will be a lot harder to find, and they will exploit another child, but also it makes it harder for law enforcement to prosecute the case. So they could end up walking because of a mama bear or a daddy bear moment. We do not want you to delete any accounts or relevant materials. That is also kind of a gut reaction, other than to just freak out. It's like, let's delete it, let's make it go away. Save it. We will delete it later, but we gotta save it for now. Please, please, please do not, if there are sexually explicit images of your child, or regardless of what it is, do not send, don't say, I'm going to send these to my phone from your phone, because your phone will get taken for evidence. So leave everything in the native device where the communication took place. That's all that law enforcement needs, okay? You don't want to have to give up your phone to. And then please, again, natural consequences will come later. But in that moment right there, please do not shame or punish your child. Don't say things like, we told you never to do this, we told you not to send nudes. You will get there eventually. Your child already knows like that this is bad. So the more that we can sort of protect the process in that moment, get them on the other side of it, we can deal with what sort of changes need to happen in, digital access after that.
All right, so I basically recommend doing everything in terms of priority. So 1, 2, 3. 1, you always want to report this to NCMEC with a cyber tip line and also to the platform. 2, I strongly encourage you to report it to police, but only if you feel comfortable. And then 3, one of the unfortunate side effects of this becoming so prevalent is that there are actually a lot of lawyers who specialize in these sorts of cases from the civil side now who can help walk you through these things. So you should consider actually seeking out legal representation. The biggest thing to remember, though, is take it down. Please take a photo of this slide. So Take It Down is actually a resource that is available from NCMEC, and essentially what it allows you to do is take an unlawful intimate image, upload it to this website, and then it will be recorded, and then the actual hash value image, the fingerprint of the image will be dispersed to all other platforms, so they'll be notified to take it down because it is CSAM. If for nothing else you're like, your kid is not in a place where they can report this to police or talk about it with anybody else, this is one step they can take to help report those images and remove them. So, and this is no cost, it is completely safe, it is completely free of any charge, so strongly recommend that. You can find it by going to this right here on the NCMEC website, and then they also provide a series of how to remove explicit or report explicit content from these various platforms on their website right here. So the takeaways is that we have a very long way to go. Right now, we are at a weird sort of tipping point in regards to a lot of legal decisions. Platforms are now being held to be civilly liable because, frankly, they've known about the child exploitation that's been happening on their platforms, and they're now starting to see the consequences. 40 different attorney generals within the United States have civil suits pending against so many different social media platforms, so many different gaming platforms. We are also seeing individual civil suits that are occurring. We are seeing legislation that is pending in Congress. We are seeing a massive conversation right now about age verification and how we balance age verification with privacy for anyone who has potentially deleted their Discord account within, the last 2 months? Yeah. The gaming platforms have become really popular, and at the same time, they are now facing increased scrutiny because everyone's recognizing, hey, you have designed yourself for children, but you're doing nothing to actually keep them safe. There's a lot of increased education in regards to gaming online, and there are tons of preventative efforts. For folks who want to hear more about all of the legislation and everything that is happening within Congress right now, the good, the bad, and the ugly, more than happy to talk to you about that ad nauseum down at our table. But here's the thing. We love this presentation. We love PAX so much because it consists of basically a bunch of other fellow gamers who are now growing up and having families of their own, or being providers or caretakers for children in different capacities. The number of psychologists or librarians or streamers who come up to us and be like, I have kids in my life, I don't have my own, but I want to keep them safe. Thank you for doing everything that you can. This is totally 100% a community effort, and the fact that all of you are here, I really want you to give yourself a round of applause because this is hard, and you did the absolute important step of educating yourself. We almost never have enough time for questions. In fact, we now have 1 minute and 45 seconds for questions, so we're not gonna do that. Instead, we will hang out outside a little bit to answer any questions that people may have, but again, we are going to be at our table outside of room 154, right next to the Center for Suicide Awareness, and we're gonna be there basically the entire time. We have longer hours than most show hours. We have packets with specific guidelines in regards to age-appropriate
resource
steps.
guides.
Yes, resource guides.
Come get one.
Yeah, we also have our business cards. We are happy to talk to you about any efforts that we can have or potentially ClickSafe partnering with your local communities in order to bring this education and information. And then otherwise, y'all rock, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Pause, but play
Ó,
button.
muito boa a apresentação
Video progress bar 58 minutes.
educativa para os pais. Essa é PAX do dia de hoje. E eu não falei quase nada, eu não falei nada, melhor dizendo. Isso que vocês ouvissem dos apresentadores, porque é muito importante educar nossas crianças no dia de hoje. Falando de inteligência artificial, falando do Roblox, falando do Discord, falando do Twitter, do Face e outras redes sociais. Espero que tenham gostado desse evento. E aí tem onde pode mandar mensagem para eles, perguntar e como você pode fazer para poder ajudar a tua criança. Muito obrigado por me acompanhar no vídeo de hoje. No vídeo do dia de hoje. Vamos ficando por aqui, a gente volta amanhã com muito mais. Muito obrigado. Até mais tarde.
Iniciar janela. Pesquisar janela. Caixa de mostrar área de mostrar área notificar número OBS MT de arena OB